Hey guys, this is actually the part two of a two-part series with John McBride. Just the info that he's had on doing business here in El Salvador was so extensive that we decided to make it into two parts so that it wasn't too long. So I would invite you to go watch the first part first and then come back and hear how it ends.
A lot of the investing that I've done over the last 40 years, as I mentioned, is early stage companies. Like I fund a lot of early stage companies, and I have a really eclectic portfolio of investments. I very quickly determined and described this country as an early stage country, bullish trend. It has all the ingredients, you could see it was already off the runway. The ship had turned around. And my family too, remember, nobody would even said they wouldn't even get on a plane over my dead body. My wife said, am I setting foot in that country, right? Well, a few weeks later, they come down to visit and the kids and they're surfing. And my real passion, I think if I could describe it, is making, it's going to sound corny, is making meaningful connections with meaningful people. I mean, it's my elixir. It's just so stimulating and interesting and rewarding and so on. And so that manifests itself in how I do business.
So let's go through this web we got here on the screen. For those of you who can't see it, we'll try to give the audio version. But so this is kind of all of the investments that you have been involved in, most of them from the early stage, some of them you were the primary founder, but kind of give us a rundown of your history of investments and then how that's spilling over into El Salvador. I know just recently you had a big launch party for the franchisee for Mailboxes Etc here, and so we'll
Mailboxes Etc. Where's the camera? I don't even know where
it's right over there.
I don't know where the camera is. Anyway,
so we'll get more into that because I want to ask
I just wanted to get the brand out.
Yeah,
there.
but I actually want to dive in further because I want to get the details of what that means for an expat like me. But before that, let's just set the stage with kind of giving a rundown of.
So first of all, you said I know that these are all of this. That's a fraction of the things that are in my I'll call it a portfolio or whatever. That's not all of them by any means. And I'm not saying that because I got all this. It's just that it's not. Okay, so Empoderar Salvador is my...
Which means what?
Empoderar Salvador. I couldn't say it for a year and a half after I incorporated. Honestly, like for a year, I couldn't even say the name of my own company. It means Empower El Salvador. So it was created specifically to do the things that we, that I've been talking about, for the reasons that we talk about, right? And so everything we do, everybody, you have to be, we only hire Salvadorans. We accumulate above and beyond their compensation. We accumulate a bit of like a modest amount of Bitcoin monthly for employees. You can be paid in Bitcoin too if you want, and so on. Anyway, so Empoderar is my umbrella company. I don't know who made this chart, but it probably should be up at the top. But anyway, so that's the umbrella company, and under Empoderar, we have a logistics import-export initiative. And Mailboxes is a global brand that's been around for 30, 40 years. I bought the franchise rights personally from the Panama franchisor for El Salvador. So I have the rights, or Empoderar has the rights to Mailbox franchises here. And Mailboxes is basically, one of the core things, for people to get mail here, you can send it to your mailbox number, which goes to Florida. We have a huge, warehousing clearing facility there, and you would have a mailbox here, so it would first go to Florida, and then it would come up here, and you come and go get it at your mailbox. In our case, Mailboxes doesn't do this, but we're going to do last mile delivery with some of our other related entities and so on. So
So since we're talking about mailboxes, let's just dive into the details here that concern me, that I want to know about.
Okay.
So what can, because I've never been able to get mail down here, and never been able to get Amazon packages, anything like that.
That's exactly. But there's others that do that here, but we have a.
But I could never figure it out, and it just seemed like, yeah, especially being at the beach, like.
Well, come on and see us, Mike, and we'll sell you. We'll sell you a mailbox.
So tell me. Well, what's it going to cost me?
Don't ask me
that.
I told you don't ask me details. Honestly, I don't want to be misquoted with pricing, but let's just say that
ballpark.
Well, no, I'll just say that we can do we can.
Hey guys, just a brief interruption. We'll get back to the exciting show here, but I just want to really ask a favor that you guys could make sure that you're subscribed if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on a podcast, please take a second and review this. You don't even have to write a lengthy review or anything at all. Just click the number of stars that you want to give us. It really helps us in the algorithms to make sure people are finding out about what's happening here. All right, back to the show.
Bring in your Amazon purchases or your mail or whatever, and much more effectively, efficiently, quicker, and cost-wise. I'm almost certain that we're under market because we're able to do volume. We've got volume discounts because of MBEs all over the world with DHL and different things and so on. It's a very organized, sophisticated operation. So we can import your furniture, export your car. I mean, we can handle all aspects of import, export. There's printing capability. We can provide printing for the side of your van. There's a lot of ancillary services. But for us, it's not just the mailbox's capability, but we're going to be opening up franchises in other areas of the country. So we're going to be able to use these satellite franchise operations as a place for people to drop off their things that they want to be exported, let's say through our 3PL warehousing, which has got no legal or financial relation to the MBE. So beyond that, we have
So maybe just so people aren't confused, you have to describe. So you have a number of different things you're looking to do in the logistics space. So you have the mailboxes, etc., which is more like non-commercial or small.
There's commercial aspect. There's B2B.
Okay, but you're also subsequently opening up a import export facilitator, which is what can you flip back to the other. Which is the ShipApollo, right?
ShipApollo is the warehousing business, and it's a Canadian. None of these, by the way, are starting from scratch or reinventing the wheel. So and they're all people that are. I either am an owner, investor, or one of my closest co-investment partners are. But anyway, so ShipApollo is a 3PL. Warehousing company, and they've been operating for 7 or 8 years in Canada. The guy who owns it and presides over it and so on he's got a lot of different interests. We co-invest together in different things. And when I told him what we were doing here, he decided that he was going to open up a subsidiary here, and we'll co-own the subsidiary. Okay. And his guys will operate it. So
that's a warehouse.
It's a warehousing, but it's a 3PL, meaning that
I don't know what 3PL means.
Well, it essentially, if you're a small business, okay, you can't ship your product to the U.S. and make any money. I mean, it's prohibitive, right? If you're a little coffee producer or something. So what we do is the little companies would aggregate their products with other little companies. So, and this is oversimplifying it, but so that
you get a full container.
So you get a full pallet or whatever, and they get the same afforded the same pricing. And that is something that we specifically designed with Paul Steiner at Konanipe, because he was intensely focused on helping the little guy, but we also are going to capture all the way along the spectrum. Like OTS, there is an ocean freight forwarder that is a very close friend, co-investment partner on many things. But that business, I actually own nothing. That's somebody who's come in under the Empoderar umbrella and said, you know, we'll marry our capability with your vertically integrated logistics initiative that you're rolling out, and we'll get an economic benefit. But it's more the capability. So ShipApollo, and that's why when you say the structure and the organization of all these things is not, let's say, conventional or easy to define, because some of these companies I own 100%. Some of them I co-own. Some of them like Northfield is a company that I have a large investment in. I'm a director. I'm one of the original shareholders from the late 80s, the founder. And
Northfield Capital.
Northfield Capital. The guy who founded it, Rob Cudney, I've known him since we were 10. You know, we're partners. But he controls that company. But under Northfield, these other companies like Juno and Voyager and so
what's
on.
Juno do?
Well, Juno is and I own shares in Northfield, but also in the individual companies as well. So directly and indirectly exposed to these things. But Juno is the largest battery metals, strategic metals, rare earth mining camp on the continent. Okay, and we own 55% of that camp, which is called the Ring of Fire, and I mean, we know there's other rings of fire.
I imagine that's a good business to be in these days.
What? Not only is it a good business, you wouldn't believe it, but it was the main platform of both our provincial and federal elections. It was the tip of the spear, not just getting battery metals, but the Ring of Fire, and we own 55% of it. Honestly, pinch me. We couldn't believe it. Like, it just sort of came in. Yeah, you're right. The battery metals thing, it's a big thing. Anyway.
Well, and just with the battle with rare earths, with China and all the other things.
So the deposit, or the camp, it's a bloody camp, is really far north in Canada, very remote, very expensive to operate up there. You know, the service providers, and you have to get your stuff in there using other aviation companies and so on. That's why we bought True North Air. Okay, that's why it's relevant and up there.
Yeah.
Because why do we
to service your own?
We couldn't do it, so we bought an airline. Okay, and it's not the first time. Naranda did it in the 50s. My buddy was copying him. Anyway, so. But when we do something, we became our own customer, and then we started to grow it and replace the planes and start to fly to the islands and different things. And after 5 years, we're now opening up here. Okay, so that,
I think for people that are coming down here is something that could be of great importance. So let's delve into that a little bit. What type of services you guys are going to offer? Helicopter services within the country?
Okay, so we've already invested over $1 million in El Salvador behind the scenes. With
in the aviation,
just part. In TNA, not to mention some of these other things. So 3 weeks ago, we just opened up our first operation with mailboxes, even though we've been working on it for a year and a half. True North, we've been working on it for, let's say, 8 or 9 months behind the scenes. We bought property, we incorporated, we got, expert, manager to, run that side of it and so on. And in about 2 weeks, our first chopper's coming down, okay? And my son, James, is flying it down here from Sudbury, Canada, with another pilot. They're going to take turns. It's going to be 35 hours of flying, and he thinks about 5 days. So anyway, we're actually just about to be operational, and it's so exciting. And now, what services? Well, we're obviously there'll be air taxi and that kind of thing, for tourism and tours and taking people from airport, from hotel to hotel and that sort of thing. But we also have a really big commercial business in our chopper business in Canada. Like we have a contract with the Ontario Hydro, where we help them put poles in, and construction and emergency service and all sorts of commercial. One of the things that we're real experts at, okay, you guys at the top of the pile there in the government, okay? Mining, okay? Mining. We're Canadians, for Christ's sakes, okay? We know mining in our chopper business. We have lots of experience with flying, doing flyover geophysics and mapping and things like that, okay? Like it's what we do. So those are
And with El Salvador opening mining again here, have you guys started to look into that yet?
Well, obviously, it's something that's front of mind. It's something that I think is just sort of being developed. How they're going to roll it. There's opposition and so on. So I don't know exactly how that's going to roll out. But if they're going to open up mining, they're going to need to be doing geophysical surveys if they're not already. And so we can do that. Okay, we do it. And as an example, but we also are looking at cargo opportunities, and the reason why True North weaves into our logistics, import, export, delivery stuff is because it can also be used to. We don't want it ever to be empty. So, even though we're going to be, taxing stuff, if we've got these satellite mailbox things, we can be picking up. It can all be integrated. So and we're also looking at air cargo, like larger cargo. My goodness, our ambition, okay, and we don't do things unless we're going to try to build something meaningful. Doesn't mean you're always successful, but our ambition is. And this, we start with, okay, this is what we want to do, and work backwards, like phase, how you're going to get there. And the first phase is the chopper, and then the fixed wings are coming in. But also, we buy planes on the basis of aircraft, on the basis of what's the target market. If there's a market for a 737, okay, as an example, we'll buy a 737. How do you do that? Well, if you got contracts and you got the market, I mean, you can use debt. And they're very. I never want, like you ever say, little risk, but if you've got the bloody contracts, there, it makes. So those are the types of things. So in terms of what we're going to do, absolutely next, a lot of it will depend, but. We intend to, what we'd like to be is like a Central American hub, aviation hub. The ability to go between, Colombia or Panama or Costa Rica or Nicaragua, and it's just not efficient, right? So there's a real need for, let's say, regional airline, and that's something we're absolutely planning to be. And also, and internally, of course, the country's small, so there's not as much, let's say, fixed wing, opportunity as there would be choppers. Okay, so I mean, we're already, like, with our jet. We've flown from Toronto to here. It's a 4.5 hour flight. We've done flights from Toronto to Florida, Toronto to the islands, and we're looking at maybe seeing if we can justify a route to Texas, because there's a lot of money coming from there here and so on. Yeah. So our end game would be to be able to with the port and the new airport and everything else, like it, we would like to be a meaningful, player in providing that really important, needed infrastructure, not just internally, but externally as well. So, I mean, we've got some other crazy ideas, sort of some fun things. We have met with, the Ministry of Tourism, specifically, we've talked to them about different things over the years, but specifically recently about, the opportunities with this, this particular business. And it's going to be fun. Because it's going to be fun to cook up really interesting things. Because there's nothing I like more than even when Canada was playing El Salvador in the World Cup 3 years ago, which I watched, I didn't really care which team won, because I really love it when El Salvador gets a win, right? Yeah. And they love it. Every time a new company comes in, they ring the bell, right? So why did I mention that's the Canadian World Cup soccer game? I don't remember.
I think you're just talking about just how the atmosphere here, like they're welcoming of foreign companies coming in, and they see the value that they
Yeah,
bring.
and again, people working together. Like we in the last few weeks, even we've had meetings with other people that are looking to, let's say, to do, let's say, a cross section of the type of thing that we're doing. Let's say for cargo, for example. Like there's tons of opportunity, and as I say, we look to say, hey, how could we cooperate? Like how could we, so the idea is at the end of the day is to have a gold standard aviation company, including maintenance, like we do in Canada, and so we're that's what we're moving towards. And if you look up here on the under, let's say, under the Northfield umbrella, okay. Voyager and Rocky Shore Gold, those are other mining companies, very prospective or whatever, but they have little relevance here. Other
than there's gold supposedly in El Salvador, and
yeah, and guess what? It was the Canadians who mined it back in the day. Okay, like I know the guys, I know the shareholders, I know the companies, we know the geologists. We still have not me, but in our subculture, in our within our little tight community of knowing everybody, especially at our age. Christ, you know everybody when you're 70. So, the data's still available. The geologists, like, you don't just, if you're a geologist that, you've been looking at all the maps and the drilling and stuff, but you learn so much the longer you're somewhere. So, we should be mining that. I mean, we Canadians, okay? I don't mean that. In fact, by the way, that they shouldn't be doing a beauty contest, having a bunch of companies coming in and we'll do it this way, we'll do it that way. I think what they need to do, and I know who to bring in to help them if they were so inclined, would be bring in like a very, very senior, seasoned, mining icon, okay, who's retired, who has no interest other than to facilitate whatever mandate that they would be given. And so I think that the government should have somebody like that, just like my healthcare guy, come in and at a very high level say, okay, let's get a whiteboard out. Okay, what are your objectives? Okay, somebody who's done like hundreds of the largest mining deals, and they know how to structure. They know what how much capital would be needed and what investors need, and so okay, so what is, well, it has to be green, and I get a kick out of that. People say, well, it has to be green mining, and I said, oh, what the fuck is green mining? Okay, there's no other mining anymore by any reasonable or international respected company that doesn't use the most pristine and advanced environmental methods that exist. And I remind your audience that everything we consume is either mined or grown. So, like, I anyway, that's my little pitch on that side. So anyway, I think we could be very, very helpful at a high level, and a little bit of advice on how do we structure, like, issuing mining permits and things like that. And it'll be unique here, okay, because you guys have had opposition, okay, and there is an understandable, or it's just the way it is. Like, there's opposition, so but you can structure things any way you want. You can have.
You definitely want whoever comes in to do a good job, to not foul up the environment.
Yeah, but
get
somebody like at a macro planning level to help you decide, and then you can do the beauty contest, and maybe that guy can help you. I mean, I can certainly keep the pirates away. We all know who everybody is. In fact, okay, nobody listening. There was a Canadian guy who older than me and very successful entrepreneur who was the main guy ahead of the company that bought this company, bought that company that was mining this deposit. Okay. And he was down here a couple months ago. And in fact, when he called me because he knew he lived here. And I said, oh, you bastard. I said, it's been on my list since I got here in January 22 to go see these guys, but I knew they wouldn't do it in the first term. They can't. It's too controversial. I knew they'd do it in the second term. Why wouldn't you? It's like beautiful, valuable resources for your people, and you can do it in a responsible way. So I knew they would have to do it. But anyway, but what I was going to say is he called me up, and I said, when's your meeting? He had a meeting with, the big guy. I said, when's your meeting? And he said, Friday. I said, well, actually, True North, we're flying down there on Wednesday. I happened to be in Toronto. I had lunch with him and stuff. So he came on the plane with us, and we delivered him. You see how I help people even though I don't get anything out of it? Anyway, I don't know what's happening there, but we can help if people, if they want.
So, and then Sat Street, we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but that's...
One other one I want to touch on, Spirit of York. Spirit of York, look it up. Look at the Instagram or whatever. It's a distillery, okay? And it's on fire. And anyway, it's doing very well. And we have a bricks and mortar distillery in what they call the distillery district in Toronto. And it's a very, very sophisticated, well-run company, and we're
what type of spirits they produce?
Well, a gin and vodka and scotch, or I don't know if you can call it scotch. Whiskey,
Canadian whiskey.
Rye. My grandfather drank rye and smoked Demore cigarettes. Anyway, so Spirit of York is somebody we're already talking to. There's distilleries here, and I've met them all, and we're talking to them about maybe if there's collaborative opportunities. I can't remember if I said it to you earlier in this or before, or ever said it to you ever, but there's, for example, there's a very well-known I did. Was that already on this thing yet, or was it before? Anyway, there's a very, very well-known MMA,
I think we talked about it before.
Yeah. Anyway, who we're talking to about doing he wants to put his brand or his persona or whatever. So we're talking about creative things. There's a company here that's sort of the picks and shovels to the distillery business. They manufacture related
stills,
whatever it is they use in distilleries. Anyway, so we're going to be meeting with them to see whether or not there might be an opportunity for our guys to import them from here. So we're always looking at ways where we can, do these things. So they're sort of up there. They're not relevant in a way, but they're also, and the same with the wine. It's a different company that owns the Grange, but it's an award-winning wine, and
that's the Grange.
Yeah, I don't think there's much we can do here with it, but yeah. And what else is okay? Sat Street. So Sat Street, I mentioned is a high volume trading desk, and so I believe, okay, and I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't want the CNAD regulator to be down my throat, but we just received our registration for El Salvador, and as I mentioned, we're Toronto based. We have a BVI platform, and now we're here, and it's so. These things are not. It's such a secondary consideration that we're opening up. We've got new business, new revenue, or whatever it is. It is so rewarding to be part of something that you created, and you're opening up here, and your children are even associated with it, and it's something they need here. There's not that same capability. I mean, there's other companies that do what we do, and I don't mean to say there isn't. In fact, we're an investor in.
Didn't you guys invest in IBEX?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, I wasn't thinking of them. No, yeah, they're awesome people. They are extremely competent, and we sometimes have cooperated together to get a trade done or something like that. And again, it's that philosophy is we want to cooperate, type of thing. And by the way, EBEX, okay.
IBEX, I never say it right. Whatever.
Well, it depends if you're, yo hablo español, okay. So anyway, IBEX is They're very good friends, all those guys, like really good friends. I like them a lot. Okay, so yeah, I'm an investor in IBEX, and so is some of my co-investment partners. And well, one day I was looking at properties because I hadn't bought a house at the time. Okay, and actually, Chimbera and Lexi, they have a real estate business. I've done all my buying through them, and they
Shout out to Good Life.
yeah, good life. Anyway, they took me around, and one of their guys took me to see the house that I'm living in now. And I walked up there, and it wasn't an area I ever thought I would want to live in. It's a little bit old guardy for me. But anyway, it was like I just went, whoa, like the view in the garden. It was like Brigadoon, for those of you that are older than me that know what Brigadoon is. Anyway, so I walked in, and the lady that who was selling the house, okay, she built it 20 years ago. Her husband had died 10 years ago. Her kids are out of the house, and so she was selling it. And it was her pride and joy, and every plant she planted, every window looked out at a garden. It was like spectacular, old inside. And so we sat at a table, and this is different because in Canada, the U.S., the real estate agents go in and the owners leave. But here, the lady was presiding, and she was a very proud, kind of a stern, but I loved her. It was probably my most favorite transaction I've ever done in 40 years, okay? It was old school. It was like really cool. So anyway, I liked the place, and I left. And by the way, you were talking about IBEX. On the way up to the house, I was talking to Alvaro Sol, who you've interviewed, who is one of the founders of IBEX, okay? And I was talking to him about the company or something to do with business. And I said, look, going to see a house. Click. Walked out of the house after seeing it, got my car. There's a WhatsApp from Alvaro. He says, I hear you just met my mother and saw my house. I went, holy shit. I said, you're in Guatemala. He said, yeah, well, after you left, my mother phoned up Juan Diego, his brother, her son, who was a great guy.
Yeah.
And she said, Juan Diego, there was a guy in here recently, and it sounds like he may be involved in the same kind of things that you do. He's Canadian, and he just stopped her and said, John McBride? And she said, yes. He goes, give him everything he needs, or whatever information, because they're selling the house, right? And okay, so there's that coincidence. But also, IBEX was incubated in that house in 2020 during COVID. All the guys, like not just her kids, but they were all lying on the floor and so on. And anyway, that's just another serendipitous thing. Anyway, sorry, you go ahead.
No. I was just saying, I know you've been involved with Blink, and so you have things
investor in Blink,
that you.
How's that going, by the way, Mike?
It is.
No, I'm just kidding.
They are. I just had a call yesterday with Lucas, and I mean,
He's
are
a great
excited.
Guy.
They are.
You know what?
They got
what a
lots
great
of
guy.
stuff. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it, but they've got lots of exciting things in the hopper. So
well, that's all.
He's got way more energy than I do. I was like, whoa, he's like on fire. So it's good to see.
And by the way, I would want to express to anyone out there who is, let's say, a business person or looking to invest in this country. First of all, you won't believe the attractive environment that there is here. And as I said before, the help and so on that you'll get from the government. But I'll also say at a personal level, and I really mean this, if anybody, is serious about, wanting to understand about what's going on down here from a perspective of an expat, who went from knowing not even where the borders were to being very, very active, involved, and even a citizen, for Christ's sakes now. I really love speaking to people about my experience, and it's led to some really interesting relationships. The craziest things come out of these conversations. Like there's an Orthodox Jewish family that has some real anti-Semitism concerns about where they are, and they got all the same concerns that all of us do about geopolitically and all the rest of it. Then layered on top, they got an extra one. And so I've been helping looking into and this, to me, this country, I think they would follow her backwards to make sure that any group would feel comfortable here.
There's actually a fairly strong
Yeah.
Jewish community here in
Yeah.
San Salvador.
Yeah.
I just know just because my kids go into the international school system here, and so
Yeah. So, but anyway, my point is that like there's as many types of people with different businesses and so on that I've spoken to, and and there's always something that comes from helping people and putting them together and so on. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that.
So you're saying anybody who wants to come down, John will let you stay at his house. He'll drive you everywhere around the country.
Yeah,
and,
the rent is cheap. It's $7,000 or $8,000 a month. No, not everybody. No, but I'm just saying if there are people that have a serious interest to understand, let's say it like from a business perspective or any other, happy to steer them in the right direction.
Well, where how are they going to get a hold of you?
Well, that's very private. That's a personal question. How could you ask a question like this on a podcast? They can get hold of me.
Are you on Twitter?
No. You know what? Empoderar El Salvador.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be a El Presidente or something email. But seriously, through Empoderar, my email is John. My own email is John@Empoderar.
You told me you knew how to pronounce it.
I did. I thought so. Here I am under the lights, and I can't Empoderar El Salvador. So anyway. You can read it up there.
Okay.
So it's John@EmpoderarSV.com.
And do you have is it JOHN?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
just
a lot
like
of
my son.
Oh, there's a lot of because that's JON, but
no, he is.
he is. But there's people here. They spell it JHON. Drives me crazy. Yeah. How many emails have I not gotten because they transcribed that wrong? Anyway, so that would be the easiest
They
way.
pronounce it here Chan.
Yeah. But okay, what else? Any other curiosities? Get me going on any sort of direction, and I'll go.
I mean, I'm gonna have to use the restroom here in a minute, so I don't know how
No,
much
if we're
longer
finished,
we can go.
don't worry.
No, I don't know if there's anything else. I feel like we've covered quite a bit. I don't know if you want to speak to what you've bought a lot of real estate here. We bought a coffee farm together.
We have a finca, just north of Chiltiapan, which is at around 1,400 meters, and it's about 125 acres, and it's one of the most beautiful places that I've ever set foot on. And I was actually, as you know, I was very humbled that you invited me into that deal, and people afterwards said, "Well, what do you want to do? Why did you buy that?" I said, "I bought it because it's fucking beautiful. It's just a beautiful piece of nature, and it wasn't that expensive."
That is also why I bought it, and when my wife told me not to. I don't know if you heard my story, but I told my wife, I'm like, "Oh, there's this coffee farm. It's in a beautiful part of the country where it's nice and cool." And I always driven by there when they were doing construction on the bypass. That was the back way to get to San Salvador, so we'd take that. And I was always like, if I ever find anything in this area, and so I told my wife, I'm like, "No, there's this coffee farm. We're gonna buy it." And she's like, "No." She's like, "You don't need any more properties. What are you gonna do?" And then of course I come home 2 weeks later. I'm like, "Hey, guess what? We bought the coffee farm."
I'm addicted to looking at properties, as you know.
So you've bought in the hills. You've bought your condo here on the beach. You've bought,
and I bought a couple of other condos in El Salvador for investment purposes. At True North, we bought the Halupe property, which we're developing now, and I'm working on a couple of other development projects with a architect contract a friend of mine. You know what? Sometimes I have to just even think what other stuff is out there. We're looking at properties. I've got a deposit on a development on one of your projects. The one outside of El Zonte. I own half a property outside of El Zonte, which is a development candidate. Anyway, so what's
for people that are looking for property here? What would you tell them? Are they too late? Do you feel like, I mean, obviously property prices have gone up significantly, over the last few years. What's your kind of outlook, and what would you tell people as far as, obviously it's one thing if they just want a place, if they want to move down here, then yes, definitely buy a place. But if they're just trying to look for something to buy, to hold on to, what's your kind of property outlook in El
Well,
Salvador?
first of all, I hear people sometimes try to compare El Salvador, let's say, to Costa Rica or other neighboring countries and so on, which was maybe valuable or appropriate or meaningful. I will say, before we detached the Western system from and are heading down the rapids. One of the considerations to me, is really geopolitical, because when people say, what are the prices like relative to Nicaragua, which is next door? I say you can't compare it any longer to Nicaragua. I mean, you got to compare it to other.
You got a rising and a sinking ship.
Well, you got to compare it to other governance structures now. It's not Bukele's got 90% support here, okay, and there ain't going to be any protests here. All right, it's unprecedented, the support he's got. So, by the way, people who say the guy's a dictator, I'm sorry, but it's the most democratically supported. Anyway, enough of that. But so real estate prices are absolutely a lot higher than they were, and it sometimes is tough to think, to buy and think, well, I missed it. But I think this is just the bloody beginning. If you think about it, like the Yukon Gold Rush or or Las Vegas, Nevada, when it was first getting, like there's a lot of growth still here in not just the real estate market, but like across the economy. It's the transformation here in the economy is deep and wide. Okay, it's very real. They curate policies specific to attract companies and sectors. They're very thoughtful about. I'm not saying they're always right, but they're very it's very thoughtful. So I think obviously you got to be careful. You got to be dealing with somebody who knows what's going on around here. But I think real estate here is a very solid investment. And you got to consider the geopolitical side. Even if it was 10% higher than Nicaragua, let's say, and I don't know what the comparison, I really don't. I'd still pay the 10% because this is already Bukele. Let's say, using a market term, he front ran what's going on out there in the globe. Okay, he's created a refuge for people like me, who didn't know where to land. Remember Jack Sparrow? No, there's no question. This is, and it's a great place to raise a family. That's also considered. Okay, so if you're thinking just investment, I still say solid as a rock. It's got a long way to go. Who knows short term, up, down, but I would say 10 years from now, you're going to be sitting on and it's also a risk mitigated way to expose yourself to Bitcoin. Because if Bitcoin goes to $1 million, this place, it's or if it goes to 110 or 150, whatever, this. So I think real estate here is relatively very, very solid, but I don't want to be dispensing financial advice.
Yes, this is not financial advice. Educational purposes only.
There's no upside in doing that, because if people do it and it goes up, they're the hero. If it goes down, it's my fault.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, it's like anything. Nobody knows what the future will hold.
But think about the value system here, and if I was to boil it down to one thing, why I am here and not in Canada, it's all about value system. The value system in Canada, is it's gone. The value system here is very similar, let's say, to when I was a kid. The Norman Rockwell kind of, Leave It to Beaver, whatever, Christian, not that I'm, trying to, espouse, Christian values over any other religious, because I'm not a religious guy, but let's face it, the values that underpin this country are Christian, and there's only two genders here. They're they're not crazy here. It's common sense, So there's people that say to me, you people out there that are thinking, well, I can't move now because my kids are 7, 11, and 14, and we got to get them through. Whoa, that's exactly why you should move. Why would you want these kids to grow up in the Canadian educational system with pole dancers and critical race? Like, so that's even more reason to leave now, not because you got to get them through school. No. And young people, who are just starting out, trying to make their first $1 million, which doesn't mean anything like it used to, like, come here, like, not just because it's going to be more, the probability's higher to be successful here, but because it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
It's a good place to raise a family. I think that's a relevant consideration when you're thinking about real estate, even if it's an outside just investing to diversify geographically. The reasons that I just stated, whether you're living here or not, are some of the reasons, why the real estate has got, a foundation and some intangible but very, very, very important factors that are underpinning this society. So anyway, that's my real estate.
One more topic I want to broach, and we actually have not talked about this, so I'm curious just to hear your insight on it. There was kind of a big brouhaha over the IMF deal that El Salvador struck with the IMF, and it was interesting for me personally. I haven't been here forever. I knew there was going to be a deal coming. I knew they had hired a former IMF person several years ago to bring into the government to help. I mean, they had to make a deal. Just because of the past debts accumulated by prior administrations. And so I actually thought they struck a pretty good deal and made very few concessions on the real terms. But I will say on the Bitcoin space, it really has caused an uproar. And
it shook everybody.
Oh, and there's a lot of people I know who were like planning on moving here, who now are like, nope, I'm out. They sold out. And I'm like, really? Like, but so I'm just curious as your perspective as to what you would say with the IMF deal and how you see that.
Okay, so I'll tell you when. Well, first of all, when he adopted Bitcoin in the first place, the first thing that I would say to friends is, "Oh, you watch, everyone's going to come out and say the IMF and this and that." And sure enough, they did, because it was very predictable, and they're trying to brand, El Salvador in a negative way and so on. When I heard that, basically my understanding was that the IMF said you can't force people to accept Bitcoin. Okay, so on that one, I thought, well, the law said that you had to accept it unless you couldn't. So nobody had to accept it anyway, practically. It wasn't, so I thought it was a non-event, number one, that particular, element of it. Also, I can remember Dan Moorhead or somebody, I forget who, saying this, and it's not something I embrace at all, but I remember hearing it and going, I get is that Bitcoin, government's not supposed to be involved anyway. I mean, they weren't. It's still decentralized and it's not government money and so on. So it never bothered me that they adopted it, but it did some people. Some of the purists out there, and so you don't have to accept it anymore, and you can't pay your taxes with it because they don't want if you're going to take your tax revenue from Bitcoin and it's volatile, the IMF didn't want to see that. Okay, so who's paying their taxes with Bitcoin anyway? Certainly not the old guard. So I just thought that part was a non-event. Okay, and then I thought those guys like Naib and his brothers, they must have been having a hoot and a howl that night at dinner, because I think they took a problem away from them, because, like the cost of the administration and all of that stuff. And to me, it had no impact on the Bitcoin ecosystem or where Bitcoin's going or where it's been and so on. But there was this
You're talking about with Chivo?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So I was talking about just the fact that you no longer can, it's still legal tender as I understand it. It's just you can't force anyone to do anything. Well, nobody was doing it anyway, and good. I'm sure Bukele thought, whew, that's an easy one. In fact, I'll give it to you. I'll pay you to take that one away. Anyway, and then Chivo. Well, Chivo's been nothing but an albatross around that guy's neck. Like that's where I say he and his brothers must have been laughing at dinner that night because they just took another problem away from him.
That's what I says. Like, it's like Brer Rabbit. Like, no, don't throw me into the briar patch.
Yeah. So I think it was personally, I think it was a non-event, but I have an open mind because I don't, I listen to what other guy, like someone like Samson Mao, he was just livid, and I have a lot of respect for him. He's been around the community for years, and he's much more sophisticated and knowledgeable, and so on and so on. And he said, but I don't agree. I don't agree with his assessment, but I could be wrong. I'd love to sit down with him and hear what what his thoughts would be on all of this. But so I thought personally it was a non-event. In fact, the moment it came out, I thought it was a non-event.
Me too. I didn't realize it was. People even cared about it till I started hearing all this stuff from outside and people messaging me, and I'm like,
but the confusion came when the IMF in an official missive, they released a summary of what the agreement was with the IMF, between Bukele and the IMF, and it was ambiguous, but you could reasonably interpret that it said they can no longer buy their Bitcoin a day or whatever. Now that would have been problematic, And so when I read that, I went, oh, well, okay. I first of all, I wasn't worried about it because I personally, I understand Bukele well enough that he's not stupid, And I was just going to say, I'm going to wait till all the information's in because I don't, he's got integrity. I didn't think he would just walk away from. And if he did, I actually, I don't know if I would have left, but I wouldn't have the same, attachment or whatever. Anyway, so he came out and he in his effective combative way, told everyone this bullshit. I can still buy it. I've been buying it. Look at this. We bought it today. And Stacy as well. They were, it's a bunch of bullshit. Okay, so that's fine. But for let's say an organization that who has very, very stringent compliance, or whatever regulatory, oversight, and if it was reasonable for someone to take the position that you were aiding and abetting someone to violate an agreement like El Salvador and IMF, which they weren't, but for a short period of time, some people were maybe reasonably, I'll say, concluding that. It turned out not to be the case. The IMF actually came out and clarified that they had consulted with the government and were entirely comfortable with their behavior or whatever within the Bitcoin ecosystem, including buying the Bitcoin and so on. I even heard people say, well, they said that they spoke to somebody in the El Salvadoran government about it, like as opposed to so what? It's the IMF. They can satisfy themselves however the hell they like. They satisfied themselves. They press released that they were satisfied. So, like, to me, again, it was a very short period of time where and it was a kerfuffle. And I understand it. It confuses people. They think that he's abandoned Bitcoin. I don't see it that way. He didn't. And if he had stopped buying it, that would have been problematic for me. But he didn't. I didn't think he ever was going to. And so that's what I think about the IMF. And by the way, they owe, I think it's about $1.4 billion. And I don't mean to in any way minimize. That's a huge amount of money. But in the scheme of things, in this context, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. I was certain that Trump was going to do a little deal with Bukele and take out the bloody IMF. It wouldn't take much to take out $1.4 billion. Okay. Anyway.
Well, we will see where that goes. Well, John, this has been a long time coming. I'm glad we finally got you here at the table.
No, it's fun, Mike, and honestly, you know, you're an amazing guy. You know what you've done for this country and for the Bitcoin ecosystem. You know, and I'm not just saying that to be gratuitous. You know, I look up to you. I watch in just amazement to see what you and guys like Chimbera and so on have been doing with your community, and everything from it. Like I've been to schools on Fridays speaking to the children with you guys and stuff. Like it's just you guys are
Well,
you're good people. You're good people, and there's a lot of good people here, folk, not just these guys. So
it's been a privilege to be a part of it, and looking forward. I mean, I feel like we're just at the beginning stages of this renaissance here in El Salvador. I mean, it's really amazing to see just the hope and the optimism in the people, the businesses that are flooding in,
and the weight that you and I have both gained.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I've dropped a few, John. I'm working on it. So it's,
I think I got all of my different.
You got all your different shirts and hats.
The only thing I didn't get out. This is my hat from Betty Ford. I haven't had a drink in 26 years, and I went to Betty Ford in California. So this is my Betty Ford.
That's your
hat.
Betty Ford hat.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
shout out
to, for former alcoholics.
Yes. All right, John. Well, we'll have to get you back in here again, and in the next 6 to 12 months, and hear how all these businesses are thriving.
That's next time the next 2 or 3 that we roll out afterwards. Yeah, we can sit down and talk. And by the way, people are always saying, "Oh, congratulations on the MBE. We had a big event and everything else." And congratulate me in a year if we made money. It's so.
So people can find you on the website
on Empoderar. I don't know if you ever put links.
Yeah, we can put in the show notes. We'll put. Are you on Twitter at all?
I have a Twitter handle, but I
is it anonymous? Are you?
I'm not a Twitter guy. Okay. You know what? I'm watching Twitter now, and I've probably posted maybe 5 things ever in the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years or whatever. But I follow it, so no, there's no point. I'll give you my Twitter.
Okay. What's your Twitter? Just the people who want to follow you.
It's Johnny Barracuda. And there's a story behind that.
Okay. We'll have to get that next time. All right, folks. We'll check out John's slew of companies that he has here. We'll put the website in the show notes, and find him on Twitter at Johnny Barracuda. And we'll have him back on here another year.
It might be at Barracuda Johnny. I forget.
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
All right, John.
Thanks, Mike.
See ya.